So how do you get in-state residence so you can potentially pay in-state tuition? This is an understandable question. Obviously, it's a lot less expensive if you get in-state tuition instead of out-of-state tuition, but what is maybe less obvious is whether or not it can be done and what steps you need to take in order to get it. And that's what we're here to talk about today. I can assure you that it is definitely a possibility. It just depends on a number of different variables. So my name is Michael McKelvey. I am the founder of College Guide Pro, the leading solution for families to plan, shop, and find thousands in savings on college. I'll put a link down in the description if you want to check that out. And if you're new here, make sure to hit that subscribe button, hit that like button to follow along for more college insights here on this channel. Let's jump into it. So first off, understand that this will vary state by state. Every state is different in how they handle this. Some states handle it similar to others, but again, it's going to vary state by state. Some states will be a lot more strict than other states. So for example, I was just speaking with my friend who went to Utah. He pulled this off. He lived there for basically a year, was able to get in-state tuition after living there for a year. Utah is probably one of the more friendly states in this category. But again, point being, this varies state by state. Second additional point here, this will take some time. So it's not something where you can just go to the state, get a driver's license, then hop into the admissions or financial aid department and say, hey, look, I'm a resident here now, you need to change my tuition. This will take some time. At the very least, it will probably take you living in that state for at least 1 year. So this is not something that can be pulled off instantaneously, but most people go to college for at least 4 years, maybe 5 if you're doing a victory lap.
Man, I'm so nervous. I mean, first and second grade were easy, but social studies, division, this is gonna be tough.
Or if you're taking a more strenuous degree. So it is still worthwhile if the program that you're considering is out of state or if you're just considering an out-of-state school for whatever reason. But again, understand that this can take some time. So step one in your journey here involves contacting the admissions department to see what requirements that state and that school will have in order for you to be able to get in-state tuition. The admissions department actually, and this is, I think, maybe a fallacy that kind of floats around out there, is these financial aid departments, these admissions departments, they're unwilling to even speak with students. They will absolutely speak with you and hear you out. So ask them, what is required to get in-state residence? You don't have to divulge any more details than that about your own personal situation. You know, just let them know, again, I'm considering potentially moving to this state, and I'm just curious, when would I be able to get in-state tuition as I'm forecasting out whether or not this makes financial sense to pursue the program that I'm looking at your school. You don't even maybe have to give that many personal details. That might be more than you want. But again, point being here, contact the admissions department. They will let you know. Step two involves looking at your cheat sheet. And that cheat sheet is the residency reclassification form. States will have a form that will list out what it is needed in order to get in-state residence. And this will apply to the college. So for example, you might need a driver's license. That might be one variable. Again, it's not going to be all that's needed, as I mentioned earlier on, but that might be one piece that they will want to see. It might be helpful to see, for example, that you have a job there. You have a W-2 that shows that you are making money there and you've lived there throughout the year. So for example, if you got a place there during the summer, you didn't maybe live in the dorms during the summer, but maybe you got an apartment as soon as your freshman year ended, you lived there for 3 months, and you have W-2 income or pay stubs showing that you were working there through the summer. That can be another piece that can help add some weight to your case as to why you should get in-state residence. You want to take a look at this cheat sheet and try to build as many different variables for a case around why you are now an in-state resident and why you should be considered for in-state tuition costs. So check out this form. So it's always helpful to see a real-life example of this being applied, or at least a case study of sorts. So I reached out to my friend. Here's what he said. I had to prove that I had lived there for a year without being out of state for more than 60 days, which I was not, but I got a letter from our coaches saying that I was working in Utah for all of the different summer camps. So I had to show this to the DMV, that letter along with a list of my completed course, so that showed that I was present all year and I got my driver's license from Utah, which is all I can remember the school needed for me to show in order to get in-state tuition. I remember being surprised at how easy it was to do. They didn't check tax records or anything because I had worked a summer job in Oregon. So I'm not sitting here advocating for you to lie on this process. I think you should be truthful. But here we have someone laying out that, yes, this is indeed possible. And it's maybe not the same amount of hurdles that a lot of people might say it is, right? So I think what is often displayed and suggested is that getting in-state residency is this incredibly difficult task that you'll never be able to pull off. The only two people that I have ever met that have attempted this were successful within 1 year. Now, they maybe went to more friendly states, but I think the biggest thing here is they did their homework. They didn't just rely on what the crowd or the consensus was saying. They did their homework. They figured out what they needed to do in order to get in-state tuition. This will vary state by state, but I thought that'd be helpful to share. Still, you want to keep in mind that this does not guarantee that you will get in-state tuition costs. It's simply building the best case possible for yourself in order to get that. I do believe that the consensus is, though, hey, you shouldn't even attempt this. It's too big of a risk. You won't be able to get in-state tuition costs. I think it's a lot more doable than people are willing to admit. It's just that it does require the risk of going for it, something you might not otherwise be comfortable with. Another note here, if you're maybe eyeballing, for example, Utah and you live in the West, you can get the Western Undergraduate Exchange Program, the WUI, that can give you a discount for that freshman year. It's 150% of the cost of the in-state cost, which is less than being an out-of-state tuition. But that would end after your freshman year because you would then move to in-state tuition costs. So maybe if you're considering the risk of this, you look at it, you say, okay, well, I know I can at least get the regional discount program for the years that I'm not getting in-state tuition, something that might weigh into your decision here. A few other strategies that would definitely add some weight here. If your parents decided to move to the state where the school was. So that's going to be potentially the biggest factor, is just where do your parents live? So if your parents live in the state that the school is in, if they move, which would be a pretty big commitment, thanks mom and dad, where your parents live is another strategy that you can consider. Another strategy beyond this is if your parents decided to get a rental home in the state that you would be then going to for college. So if they bought a rental home, you were to rent it from them, this would potentially add more weight to your case. Again, this is another strategy to consider. Side note here, one of the questions I get on this, hey, what if I just become emancipated? What if I emancipate myself from my parents because they're not helping me financially or whatever reason? From what I have seen, this is not solely enough to get you in-state tuition costs. So simply saying, hey, I'm emancipated, my parents aren't involved in this, that likely won't be enough without these other variables at play. So again, how long you've lived in the state, if you're working in the state, it's going to vary state by state what will be required, but I did want to address that because I get that question sometimes. So again, I think this is much more within reach than people are willing to admit, but it's an obvious risk to go for. I mean, if you didn't get in-state tuition for, let's say, the first 2 or 3 years, that can be a $50,000, $60,000 difference in comparison to just staying in-state, or maybe going to a private school where you get a bunch of merit money and it's less expensive, whatever the reason. I understand that it's a risk, but I do think that people tend to overweight this risk, and it's much more doable if you get strategic. So hopefully you found this video helpful, and if you're new to this channel, make sure to hit that subscribe button to follow along for more college insights. Again, my name is Michael McKelvey. You guys take care.